good morning, all the participants. Thank you for coming to our session in Data and Computational Journalism Conference Indonesia 2022. For today's agenda, we're going to discuss about data scraping, analysis, and visualization with R. We have Mr. Shadab Nazmi here from BBC South Asia. He's currently an editorial lead for visual and data journalism with BBC South Asia Bureau. He works with 6 Indian and 4 South Asian language services, analyzing elections and data investigations. He is an award-winning journalist and has been a recipient of multiple fellowships, including MJ Baird Fellowship in New Orleans back in 2019, and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute Fellowship in 2018 in Woods Hole, Boston. Mr. Shadab, you will have around 1 hour for your presentation and live demo on using R. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, I still feel like 1 hour is not enough to go through every bit of R and R Studio, but I would be touching upon various other things. And, you know, of course, it's such a big platform. It's such a big programming language. There are a lot of things which I also don't know. So, I mean, again, we're still learning, we're exploring, but the idea is basically to talk about how R can be useful for journalists. So I have a little presentation, if that's okay, if I can share my screen.
I'm going to switch you as a co-host then.
Yeah. So quick question before I start, like, do any of you use R for your journalistic purposes, any storytelling or data, or it's just the introduction, first time you're coming across as R? Anyone? Has anybody used R? That's okay if you haven't. Erwin, I think you're on mute.
Yes, we already introduced R in some our previous workshop, but we're still not really confident in using R in teaching journalism student or using it in our own newsroom.
No worries. I think, you know, the idea is basically to kind of give you an introduction to what this programming language can offer and why is it so popular amongst journalists. There are other programming languages as well, like Python and JavaScript, and there are so many. Right? There is nothing right or wrong, but there are reasons why people love to use R if you're a journalist. So let me just share my screen and then. Okay, so let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, it's on.
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to speak to the journalists from Indonesia, and of course also journalists who are in that region but not from there. This language has been used like for quite a while now, you know, among statisticians and you know, academics, you know. But among the journalists, it has been a little popular in the last 4 or 5 years, maybe, I think, because R is a language, you know, which allows you to have a lot of customization, you know, either it is charts or you know, data analysis and everything. So, right, so I have a meme for you. So, you know, I know that you as journalists who are dealing with numbers and statistics, you are constantly using Google Sheets and Excels, and it's a great tool. Of course, it's been there for ages. We are always using it to either, you know, clean the data or make sure that it, you know, it fits to our structure of the data. We clean it, we filter it, we sort it. We sometimes also visualize using Google Sheet and Excel. Right. So, not to say that this is a very useful tool, but Google Sheet and Excel has also its own limitations, right? So what happens is, let's say that you have data of, you know, let's say company data, right, which is nearly 1 million rows, right? So in that case, when you I think they have some people waiting, so I'm just going to.
Yeah, you don't have to worry with the guests. I'm going to approve them.
Right. So let me just close this. So what happens is, like with the Google Sheet, of course, it's a great tool where you can use pivot tables and you can do filtering and you can do sorting. But the moment you have a big data, right? We're talking about millions of rows, maybe like thousands of columns, then your Google Sheet and Excel start to hang, right? Then also it's difficult to kind of filter the data because there's so much going on in front of you. It becomes overwhelming to understand what do I do with this, right? There's so much data. I mean, how do I make sense out of it? And that's where R becomes handy, because it can easily help you navigate the big data sets. And you imagine a platform, imagine a language where you can sort, filter, manipulate the data, and simultaneously visualize the data at the same place. So that is what R offers you. So R offers variety of options to journalists, clean, analyze, and visualize all at one place. So you don't have to like clean the data on Google Sheet, then copy it and create a new sheet and paste it, and you do your own filtering there. There's a lot of multiple layers of work you do there. That is kind of negated, that is kind of excluded in R. You don't have to do all of that, which is why journalists are very keen to use this programming language. Right. So why R interests journalists? First of all, it's free and open source, so you don't have to worry about paying for it, right? And it works on almost all machines. So right, whether you're using Windows, Mac, sometimes it even works on new tabs as well, right? The new ones which are coming in the market. So first of all, it is free and open source. It is available in all major platforms. And it's not a single platform like Excel for making calculation, right? So for every task, you have a library, right? So you don't have to start everything from scratch. Like in Excel, what we do is we write formulas, right? If you want to do a sum, you want to do an addition, you want to create a mean, median, variance, standard deviation, whatever, all these mathematical things you use. For everything, you have to write formulas. You have to make a separate calculation for each. But sometimes what R allows you to do is that people have already done a lot of things in that area. So they have created libraries and packages for you to kind of just download it and then implement those, run those library, and then you can do your, and it's very easy. And also there's a big support available out there for you, right? Like, I don't know how many of you use Stack Overflow for your programming language questions, but Stack Overflow is a great platform where actually people raise questions. Like for instance, if they are trying to rename the column, or if they're trying to filter the data in a way they want it, but they are not able to do it. So you can just copy your problem, or you can just write a problem on Stack Overflow. And then there are people out who will help you out to kind of solve the specific problem. And as well as you have a very big R community, which is available all around the internet. You have our community website, you have even like Reddit pages, like threads, where you can go and ask questions, and there are people who will help you out. So these are the few points. Of course, there could be many, but these are the four interesting and like a takeaway points for our like wide interest journalists to do stories. So it is a great statistical programming language. It allows you to visualize custom charts, and also you can do a lot of manipulating the data. You can also do a lot of wrangling the data, or cleaning the data, or scraping the data, whatever you call it. There are so many things you can do here. So even before like I go and I explain it to you that how we do it, and I'll show you the live demo, and there are the many tasks which you can do it. There are a few terminologies you need to keep in your mind before we start the demo presentation. There is something like, so for instance, there's something called library. So as I just said, that for every task you have a library. So for instance, if you want to clean the data, right? If you want to, there are duplications, the column names are not right. If you want to do mass calculations. So what the R users have already done is they have created a package, right? So what you can do is, in order to use that package, we run this command called library, and then we write the package name, right? So, and this only works when you already have these packages installed on your R. If it is not installed, you don't have to go on the website to install it. You clearly write this command, which is called install.package. I will show it to you. I mean, of course, but I am just going to walk you through the terminologies as well. So what you do is you write install.packages and whatever the package name you're looking for. So for instance, to visualize the data, like the way we visualize, there's a library called ggplot, right? So what you do is, if you don't have ggplot installed in your R, what you would do is you would write install.packages, and then you will write ggplot here in the code sign, and then you run the code, and it automatically, you will see that the R is actually downloading that package for you. You don't have to go to a third-party website to download it. So you can do all of these tasks being in the R environment. You don't have to get out. So all the packages are actually available on CRAN. CRAN is basically like it's like a website of R where you have all these libraries and all these packages available. So, I mean, again, you don't have to go on CRAN website to download it. You can simply write this command, install.packages, and then you write the package name. In this case, as I mentioned, you can write ggplot. For manipulating data, we use something called dplyr and tidyr. So you can, instead writing ggplot here, you can type dplyr here and it will install it for you. Is this clear so far? I hope I'm not speaking too fast. I mean, just want to make sure that we are at the same pace. Okay, now moving on to this sign. Please ignore this colon. I just use that colon to explain. There's this sign like a marker bracket, whatever you call it, and a hyphen. So what it does, it's like I am assigning something to. So for instance, imagine this is a notebook, right? And in this notebook, there's a text, right? So for R to understand that there is a text in this notebook, what will I do is I will take this text and I will use this symbol and tell R that, look, this text belongs to this diary. So this is a variable which we are talking about. The diary is a variable, and this is the data, right? So in order to assign this data into a variable, we use this sign. Don't worry about it right now. It might sound like I'm talking, to the whole to nonsense, but when we will do it practically, then you would understand what I'm saying. And then there's something called like percentage sign, and then you have the same bracket here, and then you have percentage sign. That is called piping. So what exactly is piping? We'll be using that a lot. Piping is basically, imagine that, again, I'm going to use this notebook. Imagine that on the first, I want to work with this diary. I want to make changes to the content of this diary, right? So R would not know which page exactly I'm working with, what kind of data I'm working with. So what the piping allows you to do it is that you can easily tell R that, look, I want to work with this diary. So any change I make in the content of this diary belongs in this diary, not in the other diary, right? So basically, it's like getting into the directory. I'm going to show it to you how it works, but just to give you a little understanding of how the piping works, so that it's easier for you to understand that you are not making the wrong calculation or anything like that. And of course, as we go along in the live demo, I'll explain you the most common use syntax, and we will start rather than going through terminologies and going through the process. I'll just put out a problem statement for you to understand. Okay, fine. There's a problem for me in front of me. How do I solve that using R? Rather than telling you the functions, and that is not going to help you much, because that is going to be very difficult to take it. So rather, we will focus on the problem. We'll look at the problem, and then we'll try to solve that using R. Is that clear? Can I move ahead?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay. So before I even restart the code, right? You can think of a few things, right? So writing code in a programming language, and this is not only focused on R, but any programming language. If you are keen on writing code on Python, that's fine as well. But writing code in a programming language might look complicated because of the way it looks like, but it really isn't. I do not come from a programming background. I have arts degree, right? But I still code. It's just that you need to understand whatever problem you're trying to solve using any programming language. You need to think, you need to take a step back and think that you are writing a step-by-step recipe of a sandwich, right? It might sound easy, but let's say if a person who has never made a sandwich in his life, you need to make sure that every step you write is, you explain it well, and it's written very descriptive, right? So this video I'm going to show you, like, it's a very small video, but this actually explains you when you're writing your program, when you're writing a code. Sometimes your computer does not have a brain, it's on its own, right? You need to make sure whatever you're telling computer to do, it will do it, of course, but the way you tell the computer to do it, it might be, it might look great in your head, but it might not look great in the head of the computer. So let's just quickly see this video and see what this video actually shows.
You're not making any sense. Sorry, you ruined it on purpose.
You know what? I'm hungry. I could really go for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Do you guys think you can write down some instructions and teach me how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
Yeah. I'm done.
Step 1, get 2 pieces of bread out. Got them. Get a butter knife and get some PB. Take 1 piece of bread, spread it around with the butter knife.
No, Dad, with the peanut butter.
I'm just doing what it says. It says take 1 piece of bread, spread it around with the butter knife.
Hold on.
Get some jelly, rub it on the other half of the bread.
No, Dad, open the jelly.
It doesn't say to do that. Put the breads together on top of each other. Take a big bite. This doesn't taste like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Failed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I had to make it extremely specific.
Oh, good. I'm starving. Take 2 pieces of white bread out of the bag. Take the lid off the jar of peanut butter. Get a butter knife and stick it inside of the peanut butter jar. With the knife, scoop a bit of peanut butter out.
A bit, that means like a lot.
A bit means a lot?
In my world.
All right. There we go.
Doing better than before, though.
Open the jelly jar. Squeeze it onto the other piece of bread.
No.
Done. Closer. Get 2 pieces of bread. Get some peanut butter. Take the peanut butter knife. Open the peanut butter. Put the knife in the PB. Get some jelly. Open the jelly. Squirt the jelly onto the bread.
You're supposed to.
Take the butter knife with the peanut butter on it. Wipe it all over the piece of bread that's blank. Take the butter knife, rub the jelly all over the piece of bread.
Oh, he's doing better.
It says all over. Put the 2 pieces on top of each other.
All right, so I mean, you got a gist of it. What I'm trying to say is writing a code, writing a program is equivalent to making a peanut butter sandwich, right? And you need to tell computer a step-by-step process of how you should make a peanut butter sandwich. Otherwise, you're gonna end up either having jelly in between, the jelly jar in between of the sandwich, and that is something that happens quite a lot for people like us, who are not from a programming background, and then we write specific instructions to the computer, and we're like, oh, what is going on? It is not showing me the result I want to see, and then you realize that, okay, I did not probably become very specific with my program. So that was the idea I just wanted to show. It's a fun video, but it basically gives an understanding of whenever you are writing a program, when you're writing code, be very specific and do step-by-step process so that you have the best output you are looking for.
You're not making any.
Sorry. Okay, so Exactly. So so I'm not too sure how many of you have downloaded R, but if you have, that's fine. I just want to show you how the actual R console looks like. So this is basically your R console, right? Whenever you when you download R Studio and R, both are separate. So you have to download both to make it work. Once you download it, then you will have something like this. Don't worry about all this code and chart here. That was something which I was working on last night. So now you have this part of our console where you actually write your code. We will be writing our code. And this is where this part, which is the console, it actually tells you if there are any errors. So when you run the program, it will tell you, okay, no, there is an error somewhere. You need to watch out what is going on. Just have a look at it and see whether it's working or not, right? So, and if it runs perfectly, there will not be any errors out there. And this is called the workspace, where you have, so let's say if I have loaded my data, then, it will show me that, okay, fine, this data has been loaded here. So for instance, it says like, there are 4 observations of 3 variables. So it actually tells you that the data has been loaded. So if the data has not been loaded, it will not come up here. And this is the plot. So any visualization we do will be seen here, right? So any plot we do, visualization, any column chart, line chart, anything, it will show up here. So overall, it's not complicated. So what we will do is, in simple words, we will write up code here. This part of the console actually tells you whether there has been any error in your code or not. If there isn't, it will run out entirely. If it doesn't, you will see error in red marks. And this is your workspace where it shows you whether your data has been loaded or not. And this is plot where whenever you visualize something, that plot will show you the visualization there. Is that clear? Okay, so I have a sample data. I am going to share in the chat. Can I?
Yes, you can just copy paste the link to the chat.
So this is basically a sample data we're going to play with today. So what does this data show us? Let's just walk through the data first before we start working on it. So it's a very simple data about hotel bookings, right? I mean, of course, that might not be relevant to our job, but you actually encounter this kind of data quite a lot. So now you have the dates, right, which is from 26th January to 3rd of February. You have hotel ID, like these are the unique ID which identifies a specific hotel. And then you have room type, what kind of room has been booked, and number of days people have stayed in this particular hotel. And then we also know that what kind of device type did these people use to book these hotels. So like we know that people have booked from mobile, web. So these are the two the two medium which allowed them to book the hotels. What are the transaction costs? How much did they pay for these hotels, right? So like this is unit free, but like let's consider like Indonesian rupiah. So 350, 120, and all of this. And where do these people actually make the booking from? They use booking.com, Expedia. So they are two. So I have already pasted the data on the chat group, but so is this data clear? Just show me like a hands up or things like that. I mean, otherwise I'll explain it again. The data looks good to you? Yeah, okay, fine. So if you already have downloaded R Studio, then you can actually try that data. So shall we start?
Yes, all good.
All good, okay. Right, so, okay, let me just open my R. Okay, so this is how your R looks like. Everything is empty here. Don't worry about these, and don't worry about these. These are the older ones, which I just. Now, in order to start a new file, we just go on File, and click on new file. And then you have something called R script. So we'll click on that. And then you will have this page opens up. Right now, even before we start working on our code, let's say that you have downloaded this data. Like what you can do is simply, you can either download this data, copy paste it, and put it on Excel and then save it somewhere to work with. Or you can directly use the URL which I've shared with you. You can directly import the data from that URL. You don't have to worry about copying it and downloading on Excel and then doing it. So let's say if you're working on local data, like some data which is already saved on your computer, then in order to work with that data, you need to identify the directory, like where exactly that data is. You need to tell R that, look, I'm going to work with this data, and you need to pull that data from this particular directory. How do you set the directory? So you can go on session, and then it says set working directory. And then you can choose the directory. So I click here. So imagine that I have this data in this booking folder. I just select that and then I open it. Nothing happens. But what it does, it is basically sets your directory to that particular folder. So all the data which you're going to use locally will be pulled from that folder. It will not come from and if your data is somewhere else in some other folder, or might not be able to read your data. But in this case, we are not using the local data. We are pulling the data directly from, where is that website? This is the URL. So before we even begin, right, as I mentioned earlier, in order to work with the data, like whether you want to clean it, you want to filter, like you want to sort it, you want to arrange it or whatever, we need to load certain libraries, right? Without those libraries, that won't work. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write library, and it also gives you auto suggestions. So I click on library, and then I tell R that I want dplyr. So right now it is already loaded, but in case you don't have this on your computer, what you can do is you can write install packages. Remember, we just talked about that. And then we write dplyr. And then we just select it all and then run it. So since I already have it installed, I don't have to worry about it. But once you run it, like, let me just show it to you what happens when you run it. It says updating loaded packages. So I don't want to update it right now, but like it will tell you here that it is installing everything. And once it is installed, it will tell you it is done. So right now, already have dplyr. So I'm going to load it. Right? I want to load another library, which is called tidyr. I'm going to write again the same thing. I'm going to write tidyr. And I also want to load another library. So this library is called Rio. What this library does is basically helps you read the data from the web, from the URLs, right? So the dplyr and tidyr will not allow you to read the data from a URL. This library will do. It's called Rio. I'm going to download it as well. And the final is ggplot, which is basically ggplot2, which is basically a package which allows you to visualize the data. So right now we have 4 libraries which we are going to load. One is dplyr and tidyr. These are the basically ones used for cleaning the data. Rio is basically a package which allows you to read the data from URLs and web. And finally, the ggplot2 is the library which allows you to visualize the data with charts. Is this clear as of now? Like, so far so good?
Yeah, very good.
Okay, so now we want to load it. So what we're going to do is simply select it all and then just run it. Okay, so now this is loaded here. Now we can move on to our next task, move on to our next recipe in which we're going to write. So what is the first thing you want to do when you want to work with the data? What is the first thing you want to do? Can you just quickly like give me an answer? Like, what is the first thing you do when you want to work with data?
What type of the data itself?
Yeah, that's a good question. But like, you have this data on this URL, right, which I shared here. Now, in order to work with this data, what will you have to do with it?
To connect the data with RStudio.
Exactly. So you will have to connect this with RStudio. R doesn't know where this data is, right? So now we're going to connect this. But before we even connect this, you want to name a variable where you want to store this data. So in this case, I'm just going to call it hotel booking data. So what was going to happen is all the data will be stored in this directory, in this notebook, right? This is your hotel booking data. And now this is where this bit comes in. Basically, I'm assigning that whatever you do, whatever the data you're going to connect, you put it and store it here, right? So this is the assigning sign, which I just mentioned earlier. Now we're going to use the function from Rio, which allows you to import the data from a URL. So I'm just going to write Rio import. So this is basically like a function to import the data from web. And now I'm just going to use double quote. And I'm going to come back here, copy this URL, and paste it. Is this clear? So what I have done is I have named a variable, right? Hotel booking data. So all this work which is going to happen here, the data which will come will actually be stored in this name. So I don't have to write this part again and again. Now I just select it, select all, and then I run it. Now there is no error here. That means this data has been loaded. So how do I see that this data has been loaded? I can simply do view, and then because my data is stored here, I'm just gonna paste it here. And I'm gonna run this. The moment you run it, you see that your data is already available in R. Do you see the data? So I'm gonna go back again. I'm just gonna show you, since the data which Rio is reading is being stored in hotel booking data, this variable. I just did view, and then it tells me and shows me the data is already connected. Does it make sense? I hope I'm not going too fast. Okay. Let me know if I'm going too fast, or I mean, if you're stuck somewhere, you can also stop me in the middle of the session, and then I can. Right. So now our data is, so we wanted to see the data, and we already used the view command to see it. We don't need this now. So I'm just going to delete this. Now I want to work with this data. I want to clean it up. I want to make sure that it makes sense, right? So can anybody tell me, like, what is one thing you would like to know from this data? Like, would you be interested to know what kind of room type has the most number of bookings? Like, we know A, B, A, this is all written here, and this is all the transaction cost is here. But what I want to see is, I just want to see how much, what is the sum of the whole transaction cost for room type A, and what is the whole sum of transaction cost of room type B, which will actually tell me which is the most popular room type if I want to see that. So in order to do that, we'll have to get into this data. So like, remember I mentioned earlier, this is called piping. So what the piping does, it is that when I hit enter, and it creates like a indentation here, which mentions that now you're entirely working within this data. You're not outside anywhere. So now whatever changes I make, whatever amendments I make with the data will stay with the hotel booking data. So now I've done the piping here. Now what is the first thing I want to do is I want to know like what is the total transaction cost by room type. Does it make sense? Like I don't want to sum, like I don't want to do addition of each of them, like A is here and then A is here. Rather, I just want to do a simple calculation on R and then and find out with a few lines of code which room is more popular amongst the users. So what I do, I've done the piping here. So there is something called group by function. So what it does, it will group, like it will only take the unique value from that particular column. So now in this case, I want to group it by room type, right? Because I just want to see which room is more popular amongst the users. So now I'm going to group it by room type. So I'm just going to write group by room type. And your piping continues, right? Because we are going to do more tasks. So what I've done now is I have loaded the data. I have grouped the data by room type. That's so far I have done. Now my next task is basically to see what exactly, like what is the total transaction cost by these different room types. So there's this function called summarize. And then, sorry, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a new column name where I'm going to do the sum of the total transaction cost. So I'm going to name this something called total transaction cost equal to, I want to sum, basically I want to add all the transaction cost. So here the name of the column is transaction cost. So I'm simply going to do transaction cost. Now what has happened here is that I have loaded the data, I have grouped it by room type, and now I want R to create a new column called total transaction cost, which will have the addition of the transaction cost by these rooms. Now I don't need to do more piping because I'm done with my calculations. So I just want to see now how the table looks like. So in order to run the table again, you need to call hotel booking data again. So I just want to write here data, and I'm just going to run it. It threw an error here. It says must group by where is found in data. Column room type is not found. I had mistyped the name, so it had underscore. Now let's see it again. What happens? Can you see it? If you can't see it, I can show you here now. Now the data has changed. Now what here it shows is that look at the room type, and this is the total transaction cost. So technically, room is, so what it has done is that it has taken the addition of each room type and then and created a new column called total transaction cost where the value is. So we now know that A is the most popular because majority of people have booked, spent more money on A room type, whereas B is not popular. Is this clear for now? I mean, do you have any other question like you want to ask me before I move ahead? No? Okay. So now we have cleaned the data. So let's say we wanted which room is more popular by the total transaction cost. And now I want to visualize it. Like I want to make a chart out of it right in the R. You know, I don't want to go outside. I don't want to go to data wrapper or infogram or flourish to make the chart. I want to make the chart here. So since I don't want to see the data, I'm going to delete this hotel booking data call. And now we're going to plot the data, right? So you will have to assign a variable where you're going to hold the plot, right? Or load the plot. So in this case, I'm just going to name it plot hotel booking. Just a name. You can pick any name you want, but I've just used this name. I'm going to assign again, and I'm going to tell, look, you are going to visualize this data using what we have found here, right? So in order to visualize the data, you have to use ggplot. The moment you will write ggplot, the auto suggestion, you can click on it. Now within the bracket, you have to tell a few things to R, that what exactly do I want to visualize. So first of all, you need to tell R that what data are we taking, right? So in our case, we are using the data called hotel booking data, which we had assigned earlier. So I'm going to tell this is the data I want. So now what the ggplot, basically this is your plot. Your plot knows that the data they're going to pick is from here. And all the changes we have made here, right? And now, for every chart, you have two axes, right? You have x-axis and you have y-axis. You need to identify and tell R that this is what I want in x-axis and this is what I want in y-axis. So right now our data looks like this. So we want total transaction cost to be in the y-axis because it's a value, and we want room type in the x-axis because it's a string. So in order to do that, I need to tell R that this are the values you're going to pick for each axis. For that, you have a syntax called AES, which is called the aesthetics. So the moment you will hit AES, you need to identify X is equal to, here we have in x-axis, we want to keep room type. So I'm just going to do room type. And then in y-axis, I want total transaction cost. So I'm just going to write y is equal to cost. Okay. So what I have done is I have told R that I want to pull the data from hotel booking data, and I want to keep room type in x-axis, and I want you to keep total transaction cost in the y-axis. Now, in order to, when you are plotting a chart, right, you do not have to use piping here. Instead, what we use called addition button. So we want to continue with the plot. Now we need to tell R that what kind of chart I want, right? Do you want a line chart? Do you want a column chart? Do you want a bar chart? It all depends upon the data you're using. So in this case, we are using a very straightforward data, which is the room type and the total transaction cost, right? So I'm going to use column chart. Is that okay? So I'm just going to write, there's another syntax you need to write is geom, which is the geometry, which comes from ggplot. I need to tell what kind of chart do I want. So I just write gm col because I want a column chart, right? Now, I also want to give a title for this chart, right? Because a chart without a title does not make sense. So for that, you just have to write labs, which is the labels, and you have to write title is equal to A is the most popular room type amongst. So now we have, so what we know now is that we know where the data is coming from, what we want to pull in the x-axis, what I want to put it in the y-axis, what kind of chart I want a column chart, and this is the title I want to put in the chart. So now technically our code is complete. So in order to call the code, what do I have to do it again? I have to call the variable name again here. So I'll just type plot hotel booking, and I'm going to select it all. Can you see the chart here on the other side? you can see the chart here. It's fairly simple that you have a room type here, you have A and B, and you have the transaction cost in the y-axis. And this is the title I have put here, which is A is the most popular room type amongst travelers. Just space here. Now, if I want to make a little bit of changes to the chart, how do I do it? So let's say I want to flip this chart like this. I do not want a vertical column chart. I want it like a horizontal column chart or horizontal bar chart. So there's a very simple command which you can write here. It's called food flip. Again, it falls in ggplot2, and I just select it all again and then run it. You can see here that you have a horizontal chart here. What if I want to color these bars, right? This is gray right now, it looks very bad. I want to color it to something like this, red or green, whatever. So in order to do that, we just need to come on geom column and then just use something called fill. And you have to specify the color. You can do red. Let's see what happens. So now you have a red color bar chart. Let's say you want to also put a subtitle here. How do I do it? So you can just simply, within the labs title, you can just do subtitle. And this is a random. I'm going to select it all again and then run. You also have subtitle here. Can you see it? So what we just did was that we had a huge data about different hotel types, the hotel ID, the date, the room type, the transaction cost. But I was merely interested in, let's say, which we always do as journalists, is basically looking at the data and pick the things which we want, and then visualize it the way we want to do it. And we just did it here. So we took the whole of the data, we made our own calculations here, and then we plotted the chart here. So there's one more additional thing I want to show you. Like for the BBC, when I make charts, so BBC has its own library, it's called bbplot2. So all I have to do is I have to load that library and write a very simple syntax. This chart will be converted into a BBC chart. Let me just show it to you how it works. So there is a library called bbplot2. And here, all I have to write is wreath style, which is the font for our BBC. And then I simply select it all again and run it. You will see that this chart has the style of the chart changed because this is the package which we use at the BBC called bbplot2. Right now, we can see that this line is breaking here. So in order to fit this line, I can just break the line somewhere. So in order to break the line, you just have to come here, and just type -n. So what it will do is that it will break the line from here. Let's set it all again and then run it. So you have line break here and you have a chart here. Does anybody have any question? Before I even move further, and and I don't want to bombard you with information and then you have difficulty understanding, because it's the first time, I reckon it's the first time you're experiencing R as a first-hand language. Then I don't really want you to be overwhelmed with the data and the kind of syntax we write.
There's one question, Shadab. How to identify the right library for your own purposes?
Right. So you can go on RStudio website and you have a list of all these libraries, which tells you what it can do and it can offer it to you. But in journalism, these are the three most important libraries which needs to be used, which is dplyr, tidyr. These are more for cleaning the data. ggplot2 is the most important library for visualizing the data. But of course, there are some additional packages. You have rwest, something called rwest, which allows you to scrape the data from web. And you have There are hundreds of, but there's a book I would recommend if you are interested to know about specifically using R for journalists. There is this book called Practical Book for R and Mass Communication. Let me just share the. So this book has all the relevant what do you call it, libraries which will be useful for journalists. But of course, if you don't want to buy this book, that's fine. You can simply like go on our studio website, and it will tell you by list of which libraries are useful for what purposes. Anything else?
I think it's all for now. Should we move on to the next step?
Right. So now what we have done is basically we have made a few like amendments in the data. But let's say you want to do even more, like we want to do the task we do in Excel. How can we replicate those tasks on R as well? So right now I'm going to delete this because I don't want to visualize this. So instead, right, so we are here now where we have just loaded the data again, right? So I'm going to remove the pipe and I'm going to see the data again. And I run the program. So I have the old data back again with us. Now, let's say that we want to filter, right? We only want to see the people who have made bookings from the mobile phone. We do not want web, right? So how do we do that? So in Excel, what we do is we click on that filter icon and then we go and we select and deselect the ones which we don't want. But in R, you can do it by very writing command. So what you need to do is simply, I'm going to remove this again because I don't want to see the data. I'm going to use the piping again because I want to work within this directory, within this variable. And I come here and I write filter. So I want device type to be mobile, right? I do not want web. So I'll just tell R the device type is equal to mobile. And then let's rerun our data. So what we will see here is that we only have mobile. We do not have the web here anymore. Right? So we just did a simple thing. I told that to R that, look, filter it from the column name device type, and it has to be equal to mobile. So whenever we do equal to sign in R, it is always double equal because that's how R understands equal to sign. But when you do equal, single equal, that means you are telling that R that you are assigning, or you are telling that the value of this data is equal to this one. So in order to match the equal type value, we need to use double equal to sign. So now we have we only have mobile data, right? And now we have transaction cost, right? Now we want to make another filter. We also want to make sure that any transaction cost which is below 90, I do not want that, right? I want to make it the transaction cost above 90. So I can do another filter here. I'll go back here again. And I will do filter. I can do it here as well in the same thing, but I just don't want to make it cluttered. So I'm just going to do here again. So I want transaction cost to be above 90. So I'll write transaction cost is greater than or equal to 90. So I've just told R again that, look, filter the transaction cost, which is above 90. I do not want anything below 90. So I'm just going to simply, now my calculations are done. I'll recall the variable name, which is the hotel booking data, and run. And now you'll see that you do not have the data which is below 90. Right? Now, if I want to see it by the highest to the lowest, right? We always sort the data from highest to the lowest. Right now, I don't know which one is the highest transaction cost. So in order to do that, all I have to do is simply go back here again. So we are doing more calculations. So we're going to write another pipe, and I'm going to call arrange. So what it will, this syntax allows you to arrange a particular column by descending order or ascending order. So in this case, I want descending order. And what is the column name? We want it to be descending order. This column name has to be in the descending order. So I'll just type transaction cost here. Now we are not doing any more calculations, so we can rerun this data. And now you have it by from highest to lowest. Right. So what you can do is the beauty of R is that you don't have to. I know in Excel it's quite easy when you are simply right clicking and sorting it arrange A to Z, but you can do it by simple commands, and then you don't have to worry about it, like whether it be if it's a long set of data, then it allows you to have an interesting quick look from here in R as well. Now, let's say, for instance, that I have done all this thing now. I have selected mobile. I have made sure that it is in descending order, but I do not need all these columns. I want to only work with, let's say, room type, device type, and transaction cost. Then what will I do? In Excel, what we do is we copy the column. We'll control it and copy it, and then paste it in a different tab to make it because of the data you want to work with. And now you don't have to do that. You can simply, I'm going to start piping again because we are doing another calculation here. There is a syntax called select. So it allows you to select specific columns. You can exclude all of these others. So I'll just write select. And then I want room type, device type, and transaction cost. Okay. So I'll just type room type, device type. Now rerun this data again. Now I only have these three columns which I wanted. So you see what is happening here is not only I can sort it out and filter it, but I can also select the columns which I want to work with. I don't need to worry about the other data. So it's already there. And since I have not downloaded this data is directly coming from this URL. So the beauty of R is basically you are importing a data from a URL, which is hosted somewhere on a website. You're making changes to the weight data at your end. You don't have to worry about downloading it on Excel and then re-uploading it on R and then making changes to it. So these are the advantages of working on R, and this is what I also enjoy working, because then I do not want to get out of the system and do something else. Like I do not want to go on shuffle between Excel and R. You can do all of these on R itself, and there are some very interesting, you have documentation and resources for you to kind of do a read. But I would recommend, if you want to start to learn R from very beginning, and you are a journalist, I know it can be a little overwhelming because there are so many things happening with R. There are so many syntaxes, there are so many packages, there are so many libraries. So in order to do that, I think this book, which I have just shared with you, is a very interesting book. It only looks at specific approaches taken by journalists and then help them implement those using R, right? So yeah, I mean, I really don't want to, again, bombard you in an hour, with so many random syntaxes and variables, but just to kind of give you an overview of basically what is the power of R. what it can do. It can help you clean the data. It can help you scrape the data, and also simultaneously help you visualize the data, which we had just done it here. Right. So now let me just go back to my presentation. So there is this resource for you. There's something called RStudio cheat sheets. So it has all of these simple syntaxes written for you, and it explains you what the syntax does. So rather than you reading the whole book, you can actually go through this specific syntaxes which does a specific job, and then you can implement that on your R console and then do it. So I'm also going to copy this cheat sheet link on the chat, and I also share my presentation with you. So don't worry about that if you are not able to copy it. So it allows you to kind of, like for example, ggplot, like the one which you've done visualization. So once you click on it, it helps you. For example, these are like geom area. It allows you to make area charts. We have done geom call, which allows you to make column charts. So there are many kind of chart you can actually, just writing a simple one line of code will allow you to make different kind of charts. So do explore this. There are a lot of information out there, and there's a book as well for you, R for Journalists, which you can actually, if you want to, you can read it that as well. But otherwise, if you have any trouble, if you want any help or support, I am more than happy to help you, because we have a pool of journalists who are interested in our building things on our. So I would love to have you on board as well, where we can cross collaborate and exchange our ideas and something which we can do better in terms of developing things on our. So I'm more than happy to answer any question you have. That's it from me. I really didn't want to give too much away so that you get confused, but give you more inspiration that we can do a lot of things on our.
Okay, so I think I should ask some questions to the participants. Rekan-rekan, silakan jika ada yang punya pertanyaan terkait dengan R Studio. Hal-hal yang basic juga nggak apa-apa kalau misalnya teman-teman belum terlalu nyaman menggunakan R. Okay, maybe I will have one question for you, Shadab. Can you show us how to visualize a basic graph or something using the data that you already showed previously?
Yeah, so
and how to use ggplot actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think I worked, but again, no worries, I can show it to you again. So now imagine that we have a data of basically, you have device type. Basically, you want to visualize that, how much the transaction cost is with mobile or room type. So what we had done here was basically the total transaction cost by room type. So imagine if I want to visualize this room type and transaction cost, what I can do simply here is I will assign a new variable again. So I'll call this plot tel data, and then use this variable called ggplot. And within ggplot, you need to identify, you need to tell ggplot you need to take the data from. So data is equal to, since our data is stored in this variable, so I'm just going to write this, right? Now I need to tell ggplot as well that what exactly do I want in my x-axis and y-axis, because we know that charts have two axes, right? So in order to do that, there's something called AES, which is the aesthetics. This is the syntax for defining what will go in x-axis and y-axis. So the moment I do this, I will tell x-axis equal to, let's say I want to have room type in x-axis. And y-axis, I want transaction cost. Right? Now we need to tell ggplot what kind of chart do we want, right? In this case, we want a column chart. So there's a syntax called geom call. You write that. And like earlier, when we were cleaning the data, we were using pipes, but you must have seen that in ggplot, we're using plus. So basically what in ggplot we have to do is we have to connect each of the step-by-step thing which we are mentioning into ggplot. So once I do that, now we know that where the data is coming from. The data is coming from here. We have specified what exactly do I want. X-axis, I want the room type. In Y-axis, I want the transaction cost. We also told R that what kind of chart do we want, which is a column chart. And let's see what does it draw for us. And then just run it. So now you can see here on the other side of your screen that this is the chart we have made. But now thinking this chart doesn't make sense without a label, right? Without a title. So we can clearly see that A is the most popular room type amongst the travelers. So we need to tell that, right? So I'll just tell here, I'll add another plus sign here because we are further going with the specification or the recipe of this chart. I'll just say labs is basically a label, a syntax for ggplot. In label, I will say title is equal to, and the best thing about R is that when you are writing code, it auto suggests you, so you can actually don't have to worry about writing the whole thing. So always remember that whenever you are using strings, like text and characters, always put it on in code signs, right? So I want to write A is the most popular room type. That's it. And then I just rerun the program again. Then you have a title here, which you can see here. Let's say I want to change the color of this bar. It looks very ugly with this gray color. So all I have to do is go inside the geom whole function, right? And then just do a simple thing called fill, and then equal to, let's say I want to use a green color. I can specify green color, and then I can rerun the program. It's a very bright, oh God, this is a very bad color. So anyway, if you have a specific color code as well, you can also write that here. So like, for instance, I can write, this is a color code to use at the BBC. And then when you do it, you have a nice red color there as well. Now, let's see if you want to also add a subtitle here. So you can do it by just going to labs again, and comma, and you just type subtitle, and you can write, this is a random right, and then we rerun it again. So you also have a subtitle here. So what I was mentioning earlier that we in the BBC we have our own library called bbplot2, which is basically like what we have done is we have integrated all our brand colors and text and fonts. So all I have to do is simply write a simple syntax, and then it will convert this into a BBC style chart. So I'll just show it to you here again. So I'll just write wreath style. This is the syntax for our wreath, is basically the font we use here. And then simply rerun it, and then you can see here that it has turned into something different chart. So the great thing about R is you can explore, like there are FT libraries available. Like if you want to make a Financial Times, it's publicly available. All you have to do is simply install that package, and then just use the syntax to run your chart into FT style, Economist style, New York Times style. The best thing is that every newsroom has opened up their own style packages, and it's free to download. So you can just simply install those packages and use those as well.
Okay, there's a complimentary comment from Ms. Ika. Shadab actually make us think that R is quite easy to learn.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't know. People make it difficult. I'm sorry, but like maybe something it looks complicated from distance. But as I said, you have to treat any programming language like a recipe of a sandwich you're writing. And as I said earlier, we are building a group of journalists who are interested in writing programming in R. And we always connect with each other. We have a Slack group as well. So if you are interested, you can write to me and I will add you there. You can share my email with them, and I'm happy to, connect you with them. So we do it quite formally. We are doing a lot of experimentation, not just charts. Like charts are of course a vital part of R, but there are other things we can do with it as well.
One final question. Based on your opinion, which one is better, R or Python?
It's like asking, it's a very debatable question, right? So Python is a much diverse language, right? Python is used for God, you can use it for maintaining database at hospitals, to writing machine learning programs, which actually helps you run Tesla, So the scope of Python is of course much bigger, right? Python can also help you, build like automation devices or like the Alexa you hear. So now what happens is the only disadvantage which happens with Python is because it's such a huge programming language. The scope of the language is so big. When you as a journalist try to enter to that space, you get lost. You don't know where to navigate because you're like, oh, you know what, we can do this as well. But sometimes, I'm not too sure whether you as a journalist would be working on automation programming language, right? You will not be writing codes for automation. That is of no use. So whenever you are looking for resources to learn Python, or of course nowadays you have a lot of resources for journalists as well, but I think half of the things don't make sense because you will not be using that in your daily life. Whereas R is a purely statistical programming language. It has a job that you can manipulate your data, you can clean your data, you can sort your data, all of that. You can make customized charts for you. You can make customized apps on R. You can write models on R. So it's a purely, if you see it from the perspective of how it is going to help you, R is a very specific statistical language, right? And that is why I think it's very popular among journalists, because you're not looking to write automation code program, right? You're just simply want to clean your data. You want to make sure the data makes sense, it's clean, and you have a visualization which makes sense. You have annotation, things like that. And also it is helpful to those who have zero design sense, right? A lot of us do not have design sense. Like I'm zero in design, right? I do not know what color works. So where in R, what happens is that it's all the code you are telling. You are telling the machine that, oh look, move this to the 20 pixel. You don't have to worry about learning Photoshop, right? So it's a purely away from all this design tools and things. Even if you don't know design, you can do a lot with R as well. So to answer your question, I know that I don't have a specific answer, but it depends upon the kind of scope you're looking at, right? So
okay. Since we're running out of time, thank you so much for all your insightful tutorial. Just like the Miss Ika mentioned earlier, it makes us want to learn R more after this. Maybe in the future, we can also invite you again to share your experience in using R in more advanced way, maybe. And we're going to share all the material.
Yeah, so next time you have R, just let's have it for a couple of hours so that we all can do like with ease, we can practice and things like that. But again, it makes sense that, since it's introductory, to generate interest among people. So I think, yeah, I'm looking forward for people to connect with you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much. Maybe in the future we can invite you to come to Indonesia directly and to teach us using face-to-face tutorial. That will be grateful. Okay, thank you so much, Shadab. Thank you all the participants for coming to our session today, and enjoy your time in Singapore.
Thank you so much. I'm actually today.
See you around, Shadab. Thank you guys. Bye.